Before we start, I thought I would take the opportunity to thank you all for the well-received messages with regards to the Avatar update. It has been long planned, and it does genuinely mean a lot to me that you like what you saw. The background update has progressed. My architect, Curious Cucumber, architect/artist, reached out to me last night, indicating that the base colouring is done. Shading is left. I have an image of it, but I'm not going to share it. You have the line art on Minds. Now, the subject of today's video is another one of those ones where I should use Judge Moist, because it makes the most sense. However, I still want to use this avatar for the time being, but I will be putting this video into the Halls of Justice playlist, as it is only appropriate, because it raises many questions about UK law when it comes to sexual assault. Many of you will have undoubtedly known about the regular petitions that crop up on the parliament.gov page. These petitions push for the definition of rape to include females as perpetrators of sexual assault, with men as the victim. The reason for this is because UK law does not recognise men as victims of rape. It really doesn't. Forcible envelopment and made to penetrate are not recognised, and therefore men are not seen as victim. And yet, when the petitions reach their milestones, which they have a couple of times, the government responds, each time indicating that the law is basically good enough. I'm going to play a clip from Bene and a clip from Otterface, both videos covering the more recent petition. Bene's video comes from 2016, Otterface is from 2017. I do have a third video by Carulius Valentinius. I'm going to link all three videos below, because this is something that regularly comes up that never seems to get talked about or dealt with properly. And with the story I intend to cover today, I think it needs to be talked about, because there is an obvious discrepancy in handling certain cases because of gender. And I think that is a damning statement for actual inequality, where even feminists on the internet will say this needs to be spoken about. There was a channel I believe called Egalitarian Feminism, and she also did a video on this, which I will link below. But now to those clips.
So this is a bit of an update video to that petition, which me and a few others gave a bit of a shout out to a while back. With this petition, the Ministry of Justice gave a response, and to be honest, I'm not surprised. Let's take a look through it. The government has responded to the petition that you signed. They changed the legal definition of rape in the UK to include female-on-male rape. The government, or the Ministry of Justice, responded. The Sexual Offences Act from 2003 protects both men and women from serious sexual offending. We are committed to tackling sexual offending in all of its forms. Absolute bollocks. So let's go to the original petition. You will see here that it has three sources. The first one is the actual law in question. The second and third ones go over how sexual assault is treated as less of a crime than rape. For now, however, I'd like to focus on the first link. So then, where here, in the law, does it include forced envelopment? And why is the language so gendered in the first place? Department of Justice, quote unquote. All non-consensual sexual penetration is dealt with by specific sexual offences, including those which can be committed by a man or a woman. For example, the offence of assault by penetration carries the same maximum penalty as rape. But firstly, wouldn't it count as sexual assault, which as the other links demonstrate, wouldn't be the case, and we don't see an application anyway. For example, when a woman sleeps with a 12-year-old, she is almost always given a much lighter sentence, whereas if the opposite were the case, we wouldn't see that. It would be a lot more serious, and rightfully so. Except here, I want the double standard to end. I want to see women treated equally in the court system. If you sexually assault anyone, be it someone under 12 or someone in their 80s for example, you should be treated based on your crime, not your sex. The sentences which were available under the Act for all sexual offences are significant and reflect the seriousness of the offending. Sure, but that's not the point of contention with the original petition.
Issues surrounding the definition of rape were considered both in the Setting the Boundaries consultation published prior to the introduction of the Sexual Offences Act of 2003, and during the passage of that legislation through Parliament. In the consultation there was a considerable amount of agreement that rape should remain an offence of penile penetration, but that the definition be extended to include penile penetration of the mouth.
2 points here. Are you making an appeal to a majority? Because you're saying that
there was a considerable amount of agreement that rape should remain an offence of penile penetration.
I'm not sure if you're saying this to reinforce your position, or if you're just using it to clarify. But either way, this doesn't justify the fact that the rape definition doesn't include forced envelopment. As well as this, it doesn't justify the incredibly gendered language that it uses.
It is true that rape under Section 1 of the Sexual Offences Act of 2003 is, in the majority of cases, committed by a man. But there are some rare exceptions, for example when a woman is actively involved in the commission of a gang rape.
It's nice to know that in rare exceptions, women can be rapists. But not so much when they force themselves onto a man without his consent, which demonstrably carries much lighter penalties than rape.
We therefore have no plans to amend the legal definition of rape in the Sexual Offences Act of 2003, as suggested by this e-petition.
Ministry of Justice, my arse.
So I'm making this video as a way of hopefully helping out with the petition on change.org, get passed, just to boost up the numbers so that it can be discussed in Parliament. And if you want to mirror this video, perhaps your own video on the subject to help it out, please do that, absolutely do that. So if you aren't aware, I'm very much interested in men's rights, and in some cases men's rights are excluded from discussion or just not taken as seriously as women's rights are taken. But I'm not going to go through the whole men's rights versus women's rights right now. Instead, I want to draw attention to a petition on change.org called A Men's Exclusionary Rape Law That Excludes Women from Committing Rape. And as you may be aware of, under the Sexual Offences Act of 2003, Section 1, it clearly states that only men can be the ones who can rape, meaning that if a woman does rape someone, it is not deemed a rape. Instead, it is deemed sexual assault, which carries with it a lesser sentence. This injustice simply cannot go on, and I want to try and help out the petition in the description below, get some signatures, and before its deadline, which is on March 22nd, if we can push this petition to get discussed in Parliament, perhaps we can actually get something done to this law so that it is gender neutral. Please share this, tag anyone you think will be able to push this forward, or make your own video, whatever.
Okay, so now that you have been sufficiently refreshed on this subject, the story we are going to cover proves that what the government says and how the law is implemented are not in line with each other. And by definition, what we are going to talk about, this is female privilege. It is unacceptable. So this is Hollie Alice Holmes. Hollie Alice Holmes is a female soldier from the same regiment that Prince William and Prince Harry once belonged to, or may still belong to. I don't know if they've actually resigned their commission. Trooper Hollie Alice Holmes, who is a private in the prestigious cavalry household, molested while drunk one of her fellow comrades while returning to the regiment's base following a very drunk evening. We all know how this story plays out, and we all know how you're going to react, the audience, the lovely, lovely audience. Hello. Had the roles been reversed, the man would be court-martialed. There is no denying that. We all know this to be the case. Now, Trooper Holmes forced herself against a young soldier, tried to kiss him, and rubbed her body against his, before being pulled off by an officer who had reacted to the male soldier's cries for help. Whether they were jokingly or not, it doesn't matter. He had not given consent, and this lady was doing everything she could to do the nasty with him. Trooper Holmes, the next day, was then hauled before senior officers, who formally warned her that if she did anything else, she would be dismissed immediately from the army. Unsurprisingly, many of her colleagues, and that of the male soldier, who is not being named for legal reasons, which does raise a rather interesting question that I will get to in a moment, they've accused the brass of leniency, because the offender was a woman and the victim was a man. The obvious question that I thought would be a good idea to raise now after that particular statement: should she not also retain anonymity, as she has not been convicted? And the answer is yes. I take the position that yes, she did go a step too far when drunk. It's nice to know she's a horny drunk, but honestly, that opens up a can of whoop-ass on anyone who was unfortunate enough to have sex with her for her to then regret it the next day, because she could call rape, and that guy, or girl, is fucked. Okay, just the guy. The girl just gets fucked, doesn't actually get arrested. Now, to demonstrate just how unequal this is, last year there was a private who groped a female officer in a nightclub when both were drunk. He was jailed for 9 months by a military court and then dismissed. Based on that standard alone, which is a clear indication that the army holds people to a higher standard, this woman should also be charged, sentenced, and dismissed. Is there preferential treatment going on because of gender? Possibly. That is what I believe. It is a possibility that maybe she's being held in a somewhat protected state. Rather amusingly, there was a ban recently lifted by the cavalry that prevented female soldiers serving in combat units. Many of the critics of that ban being lifted said that the groundbreaking move could damage cohesion within regiments because of the likelihood that men and women would engage in sexual activity. And based on the number of cases that have come up with these incidents, they have a point. I'm not against women serving on the front lines, by the way. That's a different debate for another time. But there is and are issues within regiments when it comes to cohesion. Now, there is a further embellishment on the article I've linked below on what actually happened where she groped him, where it says she was seen approaching the guardroom at the entrance to the barracks where she demanded to speak to the male soldier. Noticing she was drunk, the guard commander refused to let her in, but she is said to have sneaked around the side of the guardroom to another entrance. A source at the barracks said the male soldier was lying on a bed in the guardroom. She leant over him, placing her arms either side of his head, basically pinning him down. He asked her to leave him alone, but she carried on. They then went outside, and she was seen rubbing herself against him and trying to kiss him. He called out, "Help me." Eventually the guard commander pulled her away. With this full and complete story, she went out of her way, while drunk, to molest a fellow soldier who would not consent. The fact that top brass within the cavalry unit have decided that this is fine and a warning shall suffice, if anything, does more to damage cohesion within the regiment than women being in the regiment, in the sense that you are giving her a pass and that is how everyone else has seen it, unless you now explain it to them why she got a pass but others have been sent to prison and dismissed for doing similar things, which you won't do because you think they should just follow you blindly. But if they do that and ignore this, what appears to be inequality, you run the risk of structural cohesion within the regiment suffering and their performance, by extension, being below standard. As a somewhat conclusion to all of this, this is not a case where the Sex Offences Act is relevant. These are handled within the confines of the military. Their rules apply. However, one can argue their rules have not been applied correctly or fairly, and fair is important. If you're going to hold people to a standard, you hold them all to the same standard. You do not treat somebody as if they are unique or protected, because to others they'll see it as you protecting women because optics. To finish this video, I thought I would take the opportunity to shill Carulius Valentinius's recent female edition Predators video. So if you are at all interested in watching a very well researched 26-minute video, please go check it out. It is linked below. So I hope you all have a lovely Tuesday the 22nd of January, and thank you all for listening.